What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Listography. Kramzer here with Joe and Jason, and we are going to tackle the discography of Dire Straits. Start off with a little bit of summary. I think among the three of us, I'm the biggest Mark Knopfler fan. He is usually in and out of my top spot as my favorite guitarist ever. Usually 1, 2, maybe 3, but he is absolutely up there. After doing these 6 albums, I went in knowing pretty much all of them except On Every Street and Love Over Gold. Knopfler, top 3 guitarist. Dire Straits, nowhere near my top 100 favorite artists. I do like them a good bit, not nearly as much as a whole as I just like Knopfler's playing. I wouldn't even say they have a great album, but there was some good moments here for me. But I was a little bit disappointed that nothing really blew me away. So that's kind of where I stand, is love Knopfler to death. Dire Straits as a whole, and especially with their albums, not so much. What about you guys? How do you feel?
I remember listening, it was like the first record I ever remember listening to was Brothers in Arms. And I was like probably 6 at the time, 5, 6, 7. I really only listened to a couple albums, but I remember Brothers in Arms. But I only remember the first 3 songs on the album. And I think there's a good reason for that. I was kind of, a little disappointed throughout the discographies. There's a couple, real peaks, but, I'm not in love with Dire Straits. Nothing like, really jumped out at me and made me want to really explore more.
Damn, I didn't expect to hear that from you guys. Sounds like I'm the biggest Dire Straits fan here then. I enjoy all of these albums a lot. I don't think they have a bad album at all. I guess we'll jump into the list, but...
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying. I didn't not enjoy any of it just because he's such a good guitar player, but, I don't think songwriting is his, or album making is his strong suit whatsoever. But I do have some underrated things, but we'll get to that. Let's finger pick our favorite Dire Straits album. What a bad segue. Jason, you want to start it off?
Sure. So my number 6 is going to be On Every Street from 1991, their final studio album. Like I said, they don't have any bad albums. I think this album is pretty good. On the positive, I think for a band from the 70s making a record in 1991, the production is pretty good. It doesn't sound bad by any means. I also think his guitar playing on this record is fantastic. There's a lot of really good solos on it. But on the negative side of things, the reason it's in last place, it starts to feel a little bit more like a Knopfler solo record. Doesn't feel like a band effort, really. Some of the songs aren't very memorable, and other songs are just sort of basically ripping themselves off. Heavy Fuel sounds almost exactly like Money for Nothing. They're just trying to recapture, past success. So I think it's enjoyable, but it's not a great record by any means. But it's worth checking out for the guitar playing alone.
I concur with Jason. On Every Street's my bottom. When I was, in the intro, maybe it made it seem like I hated or really didn't like Dire Straits. I like all of their albums, but nothing really, nothing in my top 100 or 200. It's all good stuff. Even On Every Street, it does have like that 90s sound to it, even if the production is better than its time. It's fine. There's some good work by Knopfler. I agree with Jason. It kind of sounds just like it's a solo effort. Kind of harkens back to the little bit of the Old West sound on some of this stuff. And there a lot of variety. I don't really remember any of the tracks jumping out at me. They're good listen, but nothing too memorable.
Yeah, I also have On Every Street at number 6, and I'm trying to be objective. I can listen to all these albums because he's probably my favorite guitar player ever. That said, I don't want to beat a dead horse throughout this video and say, there is some great guitar playing, though. Every single song has great guitar playing on Mark Knopfler. But I don't think On Every Street is a very good album. I think it's a pretty lousy album, maybe even a bad album. I disagree. I think the production's pretty bad. I think the whole thing is a really tacky, interpretation, or even just a lousy impression of, a Western style. Calling Elvis is pretty bad. And it doesn't have that good early Dire Straits, driving really fast tour de force, like rhythm guitar picking that he does. And the whole thing just sounds too smooth for me. I think Brother in Arms is also smooth, but it also has a lot of interesting distractions and bells and whistles going on. This doesn't have as much. I think it's just a cheap imitation of that Nashville sound, except Ticket to Heaven is awesome. That's the saving grace for me. It's one of my favorite Dire Straits songs. It's great. I'm just like, where did this come from? He nailed it. If the rest of the album was like this, it would be a completely different experience for me. Fade to Black is okay. How Long at the End is all right. Other than that, I just thought it was pretty lousy.
All right. My number 5, it'll be interesting to see how things go from here. I kind of expected us all to have On Every Street at the bottom. My number 5 is going to be Brothers in Arms. The singles from this record are great. I love the opener, So Far Away, but the rest of the album sort of has the same issue that On Every Street has. I don't think a lot of the tracks in the heart of like middle section of this record are really all that memorable. And also, I just think their other 4 records are really, really good. So it comes down to sort of the competition as well, I think is really strong. So it lands at number 5 for me.
I don't totally disagree with Jason on that, but my number, where are we on 5, is going to be Love Over Gold. And I really wanted to like this one because Telegraph Road's pretty awesome. And it's pretty much half the album. But the rest of the tracks didn't really hold up that well for me. Private Investigation's cool, but, an instrumental right after a 14.5-minute track. I don't know. I need a little more variety. Industrial Disease is kind of cool, but it also sounds a little cheesy. Love Over Gold, I mean, It Never Rains. There's only 5 tracks, and I really only think the first one's great. It's fine, but I think it's kind of regarded as one of his lesser efforts.
I agree with Joe. My number 5 is going to be Love Over Gold. It is ambitious, and he's starting to explore more new territory with the sound. You're starting to go a little more of that like humming synth ambience to it, which is going to explore more in Brothers in Arms. Telegraph Road is really good. It's the highlight of the album, but it's still too damn long. A lot of these just, or like the construction of these songs that go on, this one I think is 14 minutes. On a lot of albums, he's got ones that are 6, 7, 8 minutes, and they might as well just be the same length because they just have these long passages that are pretty mundane. The guitar work, as I said before, is enough to keep you occupied through these stretches because it's just so damn pleasing to listen to. But, I think each of the songs kind of hold their own on their own, but a start to finish listen for Love Over Gold is pretty rough. It really kind of just gels into one long, I hate to say it, but just kind of boring experience. I think this might be his worst lyrical album. Again, I like him as an expressive vocalist, but he doesn't have a lot of talent. He doesn't have a lot of range. A lot of his performances are almost exactly the same on each song. There's some pretty cool acoustic work on Private Investigations, and you're right, Industrial Disease is a little fun, but the last 2 songs are not very good at all, and that's 40% of the track listing, so it's pretty rough from start to finish. I like it a little bit more than On Every Street, but my 5 and 6 are definitely almost like a sewer level album listen for me.
Well, from the sound of it, I like Love Over Gold a good bit more than you guys, but you're not totally off because it's my number 4. Yeah, I mean, you hit most of the major points. It's compared to the first 3 records, it's kind of slight. I mean, sonically, it sounds a lot like Making Movies with a little extra reverb added with slightly weaker songs. I don't think it's as bad maybe as you're letting on. I think, like Joe said, Telegraph Road is pretty awesome. Industrial Disease I like a lot, actually. And I even like some of the songs near the back. But yeah, the first 3 records I think are extremely good. So again, it's just not as good as the competition. But I do like it better than Brothers in Arms. I think it's a better record overall.
Well, I don't think it's a better record, but Brothers in Arms is my number 4. Like Jason said, the singles are great. Tracks 1 through 3, like I was kind of saying at the beginning, I only remember those tracks, and I remember kind of just skipping over the rest every time I'd find a different album. And so I was wondering, when I re-listened for this, I probably hadn't listened to it in 20 years. And I thought, okay, maybe I was just, not remembering correctly, and there's some great tracks in the back end. And nope, there's not. They're all kind of slow, at least from 4 to 7. It's all a little too slow. The tempo's, muted. It's kind of a lot of piano, sax driven instead of guitar driven, which I'm fine with the experimentation, but they just they kind of drag on. But that being said, Walk of Life, Money for Nothing, So Far Away, and Brothers in Arms are all killer tracks. Walk of Life, It's just a great kind of catchy, swing, whatever. Money for Nothing, kind of great hard rock. Sting guest appearance is great. But yeah, some great tracks, some not great tracks. So yeah, it clocks in at number 4 for me, Brothers in Arms.
My number 4 is going to be Communique. I do like this album much more than the bottom 2. I have a problem with it because it doesn't evolve much from the first album. And I will say this, with the original first 2 albums and even the third one, the band does not get enough credit as players. You've got John Illsley, I believe his name is, on bass, and Pick Withers on drums. And the rhythm section is really good on these first couple albums. But everything else, I think, is just a little bit like, we've done this before. We did this on the first album. There's not a lot of new ground. You have the best version of Knopfler's guitar playing here, and it's great. Portobello Bell is kind of cool. It's kind of like a prelude to that cutesy style he does on Romeo and Juliet and Making Movies. There's nothing really that bad here, although I think Once Upon a Time in the West is a terribly sluggish opener for this album. I think I'm going to talk again about how The Wrong Song is not opening an album in a little bit here. But other than Lady Rider, I just don't think the album really jumps out. I think it's just kind of a safe, cautious move to kind of just do the same thing as they just did without none of the songs are really better. And I think Angel of Mercy is one of my least favorite songs of theirs. I don't really care for it at all. So
disagree a lot with that. My number 3 is the debut. I think it's a good debut record, a strong set of tunes, kind of introduces you to their sound. Got like this kind of almost like J.J. Cale type of thing happening. They're all great players. Like you said, on the first 3 records, the band is excellent, and that kind of starts to get lost around Love Over Gold. But, you got the big hit, Sultans of Swing here. I don't think there's really any bad tracks, but I love the other 2 records. So it's number 3 for me.
I agree. Also on number 3, the self-titled. Pretty much agree with everything you said. There's definitely kind of, a little maybe Western, kind of like America West little vibe going on. It's very laid back, other than Sultans of Swing. It takes its time to develop. The playing's really strong. Great kind of, like you said, introduction to what they sound like. And I think they'll get better at that on the next album. A little more urgency into it, but just a good album.
I also have Dire Straits, the debut self-titled, at number 3. You guys are hitting the nail on the head here. I don't think there's many bad songs on it. Maybe Six Blade Knife is a bit basic for me, but this is probably the album where I think the playing is at the best as a whole. Down the Waterline is great. Water of Love is cool. Setting Me Up is great. Sultans of Swing, I don't want to say too much about because we do have our songs lists to tackle, and I'll have a lot to say there. I do think it kind of falls off after Sultans of Swing. There's 3 songs after it, and none of them match up to the first 6, and I can do without that. So I think this album would be much higher on my list if it wasn't for that cliff I feel like it goes off of. Yeah, this is probably, if you had to listen to one album of theirs just for Knopfler's playing, this would probably be the one. But 2 better. Number 3, Dire Straits, we're in agreement.
My number 2 is Communique. I think it's a step up in almost every way from the debut. I think Knopfler's playing is better. I think the mix is better. I think the songwriting's better. The one thing I will concede that Kram said, I think the sequencing's a little off. The first 3 tracks are not the best way to open the record, but from track 4 on, it really gets rolling and it's awesome. Lady Rider's fantastic. The title track is fantastic. A lot of good songs on it. I think it's, definitely a step up from the debut.
Yeah, if the second half was the beginning of the album, it would play much differently and much better, but it doesn't, so mistake.
Well, I still liked it a lot. It's my number 2 as well. I agree with Jason again. It's just, he's starting to do those little kind of character studies that I think he really perfects on Making Movies with stuff like Lady Rider and Portobello Bell, Single-Handed Sailor. It's a little faster. I think the tempo is a little higher in this one. A little more rocking, a little more boogie. And I just think it's just a bit of an improvement over the first one, even if, there's nothing kind of life-changing as Sultans of Swing on it.
Well, I'm going to reveal my number 2, and it's making me excited because we're going to have another Triple Crown winner, it looks like, which I didn't anticipate. I thought these lists were going to be all over the place, but it looks like we're all going to have the same number 1. My number 2, of course, is going to be Brothers in Arms. I know what Joe is talking about, with the first 3 being the highlight of the album. I agree with that. To me, it's really the first 3 and the last 3. It can do without the middle. So there's 9 songs. Give me the first 3 and the last 3, and I'll, cook dinner in the middle. So Far Away is great. Money for Nothing's great. I love Brothers in Arms as the closer. Money for Nothing should have opened this album, though. It just feels weird going from So Far Away into this really dense, 80s texture that takes like 2 minutes and then just explodes. That should have set the tone for the whole album. That, and then you bookend it with Brothers in Arms, would have been a great way to just kind of make the album a little bit more cohesive. It's got that really cool, on Money for Nothing, just that really cool guitar sound that sounds like a synthesizer almost. It's awesome. And, it's got that kind of, some of the songs have a little bit of that plastic, phony world music vibe to it, like Ride Across the River, which, I really hate. So I love some of the 80s production on it, and I can't stand some of it. But the highlights for me in the first third and the last third are what propel it above the debut for me. So that's Brother in Arms. And Jason, take it away for our Triple Crown for number 1. I'm happy about this.
All right, so yeah, number 1, all in agreement, Making Movies. It's hard for me to hear you say that you don't think they have a great album, because this record is phenomenal from start to finish. It's been my favorite Dire Straits record for a very long time. I haven't looked at the full year for 1980 yet, but I'd say this is a very strong contender for the top spot for me. We'll see when we get there. From Tunnel of Love all the way through, I think it's just hit after hit. I think the mix is amazing. The band is playing really well, super tight, and I think it's easily his best set of songs. Tunnel of Love, Romeo and Juliet, Skate Away, just really every track is so good. I don't know really what else to say about it. His playing's awesome, great songs, and it sounds great. Yeah, I mean, every element that you want in a great record is there. I don't know. It's kind of weird that it's not, more well-known even. I think, their big tracks, at least in the US, are Sultans of Swing and the stuff from Brothers in Arms. But for me, the first 3 tracks on this record blow all of that stuff out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, I really like kind of the growth of his songwriting on this. I really like kind of the little vignettes, the little, sketches of the characters that I think they started doing well in Communique and really nail on this. And I don't think they really ever nail it again in this way. It's so unlike the other ones in certain ways. It's so much like tighter, and the songwriting's so much better really throughout. Like Jason was saying, Tunnel of Love is great, Romeo and Juliet, Skate Away, Espresso Love, Hand in Hand, Solid Rock, Les Boys. Just, 7 really good tracks, a little more, not poppy, but very tuneful. A really good album. I don't love it as much as Jason does, but I think this is what you should check out if you're new to Dire Straits.
Yeah, number 1, Making Movies. I don't love it as much as Jason. I don't think it's a great album. I think it's very good. I think for my star system, it's as good as a 3 out of 4 stars can get without getting that extra half star. One of the problems I have with it is Tunnel of Love opening. I think it's too long for a Dire Straits opener. That's just a problem I've had with a lot of theirs, is their sequencing. But this one has such a more unique creative feel. There's new styles with tempos, like Joe said, and rhythms, and everything that I had problems with in other albums are pretty much just like fixed here. His lyrics are amazing on this album. It's probably got most of his best vocal performances, even with like his little quirkiness and doing some of the characters on behalf of Juliet and Romeo and Juliet. It's really good. It's the most soulful, tuneful album. It's really good start to finish. It just doesn't grip me as a great album, and that stands to what I said at the beginning of the video. I like Dire Straits, but I love Mark Knopfler, and none of the other elements live up to his guitar playing. I can listen to the worst, Dire Straits song and still enjoy it just because he's playing guitar. He's my favorite. The finger picking, the the bends, all the little details he puts into like a 2-second vignette on his little lead and licks are just fantastic. And this, I'm glad we all at least agree this is their best album. This wasn't even close for me, Jason. This was easily the best pick. I knew that going in. I just don't hold it quite as regard. It's intriguing to know it could win, is it 1980? Yeah, it could win 1980 for you.
I mean, I haven't dug into, I mean, I only have like a handful of records written down so far for 80 that I'm looking at. So I could be totally wrong. It might not even make my top 5, but off the top of my head, it feels like a potential winner.
Well, Joe, anything to add here?
Brothers in Arms was the 8th best-selling album of all time. The joke is that everyone in Britain had it. But in America, do we feel the same way about Dire Straits? I don't think they do. Other than Money for Nothing, I don't think they really...
Communique totally flopped here.
Yeah.
The radio doesn't play anything from that album in the US, and I think that was a pretty big hit in the UK. At least that's what I read. I guess people can let us know.
And I would probably argue that just the casual music fan knows Money for Nothing as much for the video as just for the song itself. It was a huge video. It got a ton of airplay, and the original, God, man, the original MTV, so cool. But yeah, so anyway, guys, let us know what you think of Dire Straits, especially our fans from the UK. I know we got a lot of them, so this might be one of those ones where there's the Atlantic division on how they're interpreted. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, like, comment, and again, let us know what you're thinking about Dire Straits. I'm Kramzer with Joe and Jason, and we will see you next time on Listography.